Welcome back to the Laughing Tavern and our series Critical Breakdown, where we take a look at the latest episodes of Critical Role Campaign 4. We talk about what happened in each episode, and if there's any lessons we can learn from Brennan or the players that we can use in our own games. Spoilers ahead, so if you haven't been caught up through episodes 1 through 4, you may want to go watch those and then come back. Also, I'm still a couple episodes behind, but I've avoided any spoilers about this or episode 5, which released a couple days ago. So any theories and thoughts I have in this episode were based off of just my thoughts then. Also, I'm taking notes as I watch this, so my reactions are my reactions at that time of what happened in the episode happened. Without further ado, let's talk about episode 4, Stone-Faced. There's a lot to break down in this episode. The final episode of what they're calling the Overture. The first 4 episodes, we had all 13 players at the table, not all at once, of course, before they break into the individual tables of soldiers, seekers, and schemers. It's been a crazy first 4 episodes, a lot of lore, a couple combats, but we'll talk about all that here in a minute. Let's start with that cold open. I said it before. I'm loving these cold opens. Brennan takes you to a moment that isn't related, usually, to the last moment we had at the end of the previous session. And it's his way of giving us something more, showing us a different scene, taking us into somebody's backstory. So I'm loving them. We just don't dive into the ad reads and all that. Well, I love the ad reads and all the merch. I want to see D&D. So I'm loving these cold opens. In this cold open, we start with Bolaire carrying a package into a tavern called Potter's Field in the lowermost section of Dolmachiar called The Fray. It's a tavern full of smugglers and criminals, and Bolaire gets access to a secret area in the back, and there he sees several people, including the Mercanaud brothers. Yes, those assassins from the last episode that tried to kill Taylor. Let's talk about Brennan and pacing. It's amazing what just the speed of your voice can do in terms of setting the pace and building the drama. Let's watch.
At the back of this humble, liquor-drenched hovel is a thick, red door. Brass studs throughout it. It's hidden behind a curtain, but it's sturdier than just about anything else in here.
Pacing is the one way you can build drama and intensity. A slower pace will put players on edge, waiting for something to happen or for you to describe the next thing. But a faster pace will give the players a sense of urgency. And the easiest way to mess with that urgency is just by changing how fast you talk. Slow it down to build it in a horror-like atmosphere, or you can speed it up and make them think something's going to happen right now. So, pacing and the speed of your voice, something very easy that you can do in your own games. Bolaire is approached by Oddbris Drin, a one-time fence for the Crow Keepers, and he says he has his private room ready. During the exchange of the package, Oddbris opens it, realizes it's not what he was expecting, and then reaches up and touches Bolaire's mask and blows into his face, casting sleep. As he falls unconscious, Oddbris removes Bolaire's mask, and Brennan lets Taliesin describe what is beneath the mask.
What does he see when he pulls the mask off the body?
Oh, shit. As he pulls the mask, he sees... Well, first of all, a bit of flesh pulls like rubbered glue as it pulls off, but it doesn't stick to the mask. It just flaps back, and just other than those points of contact, it is dry, cracked, chunks of flesh missing to see teeth, and it seems to be powdering by the second. Not completely, but just the exposure to air seems to be making it turn grayer and open up. The eye sockets are practically empty. It's just flaccid balloons of what used to be eyes. Any moisture that was in them long gone.
The man is horrified by what he sees. Then he looks inside the masks and sees something, a glyph, a rune of power or something. We know the mask is similar to the one that was in the coffin with the dead celestial that was in Hal's house at the end of episode 1. So just how powerful are these masks? Is Bolaire a celestial warlock, and does he get his powers through the mask? As far as I know, only Occtis has a known subclass at this point through these first 4 episodes. Let me know in the comments what you think and what your thoughts are on subclasses for each player. We cut to Bolaire waking up much later, feeling better than ever, and there's a dead body in the room. Bolaire strips the body and calls forth a glass straight razor and begins removing the hair from the dead body. Then a glass cleaver appears, and he proceeds to chop the body into pieces, putting the chunks into the fire, but keeps the hands and the head and puts them into the package and changes clothes, and then leaves. Allison has a bit of a twisted mind, and I've always loved that. And for this episode, being their Halloween episode, they were told goth energy, but no one does goth better than the executive goth himself, Allison. Before we get back to Palazzo Davinos and where we ended episode 3, let's hear from Advertising Rich and this week's sponsor. This video is brought to you by Dubby. When you feel run down or need a pick-me-up, do you reach for one of the expensive energy drinks? What if I told you there's an energy drink out there that costs about $1 for 16 ounces? What if I told you this energy drink would be jitter and sugar-free? Well, it's all true, thanks to the folks at Dubby. They make energy powders that you add to water, and the flavors all taste amazing. You get dehydrated easily? Well, Dubby has hydration powders that also taste great and work very well. I work 10-hour days and then have to run a 4-hour session of D&D, and I always reach for the W energy powder before the session starts. Not only does it pick me up, but my focus also increases drastically, allowing me to run intense combats so much better. I don't do well in the heat, and when I'm doing yard work, I get dehydrated very easily and quickly. Well, the W Hydro powder is a godsend. Not only does it taste amazing, it works as advertised and even helps stop the migraines I normally get after yard work. So, click the link in the description to go to W to let them know the Laughing Tavern sent you, and enter the code It's a Mimic at checkout for 10% off your order. Thanks to W for sponsoring this video. Back at Palazzo Davinos, we learn that Primus Taconis is the one that killed Julian's father, General Raymond. And then initiative is rolled for everyone, no matter their location in or near the Palazzo. Spirits of the dead are flooding the Palazzo, and Occtis is being held by ghouls. Combat took about 2 hours, so bear with me, there's a lot to unpack here. I'm going to try and hit the highlights and discuss the lessons and other key points along the way. We start with Julian at the top of initiative order, and that has a moment.
He looks upon the crumpled corpse of his father, the blood draining from his face before he looks up to Primus, and just, with an unheard primal screech, just shouts, "No!" and goes into a full sprint towards him, drawing his blade and just running as fast as he can.
I love how Matt just can scream. As NPCs, when he was a dungeon master, it was just so deep and guttural. It was just amazing. I love that, seeing that energy carried into Julian. After Julian's attacks miss, Primus wipes Raymond's blood off of his face and says, "I bear your house no ill will." Such a cold moment. It adds to the tension. It shows that this is just business for House Taconis, and it's nothing personal. So it seems House Taconis and House Calabar don't really seem to hold grudges. It's all about power. This is easily setting up Primus, I believe, to be the BBEG of either this initial arc or the entire campaign. But we'll get into this a little bit more later because there's some more moments that lead me to think this. We cut back up into the tower where we find Lady Aranessa, Occtis' brother Earthrin, and the ghouls in combat. One goes after Lady Aranessa. These ghouls seem stronger than they should be. Occtis is thrown down to a table with a garrote used to hold him down to the table. At the end of episode 3, we saw Earthrin, now that we know it's Occtis' brother, cast Silence. These players are level 3. Silence can be a very hard spell for low-level casters to get around, because most of the spells at these levels include verbal components. Occtis only had one spell without a verbal component. Now, it was still able to do something, but as a dungeon master, you want to be careful when building encounters that, yes, you want to make your players think outside the box, but you also don't want to completely remove the ability of a character to do something. So if you're going to do something like silence, make sure that casters have other things at their disposal that don't require verbal components. Items, good spell list, or the ability to have melee or ranged attacks that don't require spells. So just be careful when using things like silence on parties. This fight is very dangerous, very deadly, and above table, Brennan describes just how dangerous the world of Ahriman is to the players. Making sure your players know how dangerous the campaign is very important. This is what Session 0 is going to be, especially at low levels where, yes, a goblin can kill a player at a low level. But if you're going to be ramping up the danger, make sure you let your players know ahead of time, just so that they can be aware of it. But let's watch and see how Brennan takes care of this.
I'm going to roll this in front of the board.
Okay.
I don't think it takes a very deep analysis to conclude how much trouble you are all in. I will also say at this moment that we have had a bar fight in the previous episode. The world of Ahriman has many different walks within it and many different opponents. And I will remind you as your friend, because we are playing a game together above the table, this world is not necessarily balanced in each and every instance. It contains a verisimilitude, and I wish for you to walk in the light of that truth.
Why do I feel like I'm being read terms and conditions?
Me too. Okay. All right.
So we're going to keep this because this is the reality of the House Taconis' planned slaughter of the House of Royce and Davinos. We're going to keep things extremely honest because the world of Ahriman is not fair.
Oh my God. So stressful.
Because of the danger, Brennan says he's going to be rolling in the open for certain things, more to keep everything honest and to show the players that he's not fudging rolls to make it more dangerous, or more importantly, he's not fudging rolls to save a player. Everything that is going to be deadly will be done in the open. And I do like this about Brennan. I need to start doing this more in my own games, because I think it does ramp up the tension, but only when you do it for important roles, not all the time. If you're one of those DMs like me, you sit behind the screen. When it comes time for Earthrin's turn to act, he attacks Occtis with 2 attacks, one of which ends up being a net 20. The regular hit leaves Occtis with just 1 HP left, without counting the damage from the critical. Brennan announces, he asks Alexander what his max HP is for Occtis, so that they can determine what Brennan would have to roll to outright kill Occtis. Which, if you don't know, if you go negative equal to the number of your max HP, you die outright. No death saves, none of that. So it's determined that if Brennan rolls 24 points of damage, Occtis will die outright. Let's see what happens.
So that's, we said he needs to do 24, and that's 21. These need to be a 1 and a 2 or a 1 and a 1 for you to not die in this moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He looks into your eyes. He drops the silence and goes, "Traitor, you should have welcomed the name alone as a gift, even though there has always been something wrong with you." With a 7, he withdraws the dagger, and the hand that holds the Stone of Night Song, he plunges into your core, and you can feel ice-cold fingers release the stone and begin to wrap around your heart from inside you.
As, What a music change. As he starts to feel cold and his strength leaves him, still having the garrote around his neck and this hand inside of him, he just stares at his brother and he just thinks that he's never gonna get to keep his promise and meet up with Thimble like he said. And he just pin disappears as that lets go. And you just see it kind of fall apart into pieces.
During this, as we see, he rolled enough to kill Occtis. Brennan lets Occtis have a moment to describe his death. I love when DMs do this. I do this at my own table, where as soon as you start rolling death saves, you have to describe a moment that passes before your character's eyes. But if the player's killed outright, let them have a moment to say something, to get the last word in, whatever the player wants. This is great, and it helps the players get into their characters. And remember, death in D&D isn't permanent, so the players can always come back later. But take advantage of it because it might be permanent. So you don't know which death at your table will not be fixed. So let the players have a moment, let them role play a little bit, and make the death more than just dice rolls. I know I've said this before on this channel many times. Don't make it just about a simple fail or a success on a death save. Make it mean something from the character instead. With that said, Occtis so far has been my favorite character up to this point. What's your favorite characters? Let us know in the comments. At the end of episode 3, I figured Occtis was going to die in this one. I still wasn't ready for it, so I want him to live. That was rough, kind of railroady, but we'll get into that again a little bit later in this video. So I'm hoping something changes by the end of this episode, but the players are level 3. They don't have access to Revivify. Now, I don't know what Lady Aranessa can do. I don't know what items they have on them, and I don't know what's around them in the city of Dolmakiar for Revivify Resurrection. I'm not even sure if it's allowed, right? They've banned arcane magic. A lot of that stuff is divine, but there's no gods. So how exactly would it work too? We don't know that yet. We haven't seen that in this campaign. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, right? Continuing with combat. Taisha is wanting to find Occtis. She arrived in wolf form into the Palazzo. And I love what Brennan does here. He knows Taisha is going to be going straight for wherever Occtis is, and being a wolf, she can sniff him out, right? So Brennan tells her to make investigation or perceptive rolls. And the DC is a 20 or 25 to find him, to know where he is right now. Anything less than that will knock the DC down 5 for the previous round. I love this. It lets the player do something and use their action to do it, and there's meaning to it. They're actively searching, so you're going to be actively searching means you're going to take your whole action to do it. And it's not a wasted action because he keeps letting the DC drop if it was continue round, right? So that's a great thing. So it's not just, I have a set DC at 25 and you need to meet 25 round after round. No, it's 25, then it's 20. So it gets easier as the rounds go, which is how it should be, because you're going to, especially as a wolf, you're going to be circling the courtyard, right? And you're going to be finding your way. You're going to eventually pick up on a scent. So I love this idea. This is the second combat of the first 4 episodes. The first was a bar fight, a relatively simple bar fight. This fight is not a simple bar fight. This fight was not designed for the player characters to win. As we'll see a little bit later, these players are fighting against characters with 6-level spells. Now, I didn't know that when I was writing this. This is looking ahead. But when you create an encounter, especially at low levels, that is very dangerous for your players, well, really at any level, you want to give them a heads up of what is coming. You want to foreshadow that. You want to foreshadow the ancient red dragon down the street. You want to foreshadow that they're in a woods surrounded by basilisks. You want to foreshadow that that temple has a Medusa in it. You just don't want them to walk in blindly because that is how TPKs happen. Now, something else to keep in mind, players never run away, ever. But you want to give them the choice by foreshadowing the fight or by making it clear that they cannot win, and retreat's always an option. In this case, this situation was dropped on the players, Occtis was targeted, and the players never had a chance to run. They didn't even know what was coming because nothing leading up to this led them to believe that this kind of ambush was going to happen. And we'll talk about this here a little bit later when we talk about the overall railroadiness of the first 4 episodes. And this is it too. So just be careful as a dungeon master that you don't put your player characters into situations that you know they cannot win without a way for them to get out of it. Also, if you are going to be running a game like this, where, especially at very low levels, that, hey, you're going to be running into the BBEG in your first encounter, you don't have to talk about it at session 0, but you want to make sure, again, like before, that your players are aware of what kind of campaign you're running, and if that is the case. Dropping a BBEG on the party at first or second level is a great way to introduce the BBEG. And again, we'll talk about this a little bit later when I talk about BBGs in a whole and what I think about Primus. Back to the fight. Primus casts Circle of Death, which is a 6th level spell, like I mentioned before. So we know these are very high-powered people that the party's going up against. He would have done 42 points of damage, but Julie and Taisha each saved, so it was only 21, which still hurt. So it didn't kill them, but it killed every other person in the courtyard. Nobody else stood a chance against Primus. So I just gotta say, Brennan is really bringing it for this campaign. He keeps telling them it's a dangerous world, and yes, it is. Primus shatters the wall between life and death, summoning spectral dead, and says that House Royce and House Davinos and all their vassal houses need to be removed because the world that is to come requires concentration, not distractions. Now we talk about how to create a BBEG. So far, in this episode alone, 2 lines from Primus sets him up to be the BBEG, and there's another one coming later that basically will solidify it. This is how you create a BBEG, and this is how you drop him into a party. You drop him in, overpowered, have him be a prick to the party, have him show just how powerful he is, but also that he thinks nothing of the party members. They mean nothing to him. They're gnats. This will just amp up that hatred of the BBEG. And if you can have that NPC kill another NPC that the party loves, or better yet, kill a player, that will just solidify their place as BBEG of your campaign. But be careful, something to keep in mind. You may have an idea of who you want the BBEG to be. It will be the players that actually determine who the BBEG actually is based upon their actions and what they've done against the party. In my case, in my campaign, I have a lich that the players eventually learned about. But there was also a duke, the right hand of the princess, who was the lich's right-hand man. And he was an absolute, let's be honest, ass to the party. Tried to get him killed by sending him off on missions that he knew were very dangerous for the low-level party they were. And it was at that point, and many things later over the sessions, that made that duke more hated than the BBEG, than the lich is. So the lich is my BBEG, but the duke is the party's BBEG. So just keep that in mind and be willing to go with the flow and change your BBEGs based upon what happens at the table. Speaking of the last line that was going to make Primus the BBEG, let's take a look at this.
Taisha's voice directed at Primus. Why your son?
There is no use in having something if it is not loyal. In point of fact, I don't know if he can even be called a son. That is going to be...
That sucks.
So as you can see, I do believe Brennan is setting Primus up to be the BBEG. Maybe not necessarily of the entire campaign, because it's episode 4, but at least this initial arc probably. But with the way the tables break out, he may be the BBEG for the Seekers or the Schemers, because the soldiers are already gone. So we may have multiple BBEGs. It all depends upon how the campaign is going to flow, so we'll just have to wait and see. During this fight, Brennan has been rolling in the open many times, and he keeps rolling nat 20s. At one point, and I'm not going to show the clip of this, at one point, Abria grabs the D20, Brennan's D20 off of the table, and throws it into the studio. Don't ever do this. Players or dungeon masters, you don't ever want to touch someone else's dice or anything else they have in front of them at the table. It's their own little personal space. The biggest part of table etiquette for a game like D&D is respect. Respect of the other players, respect of the dungeon master, and respect for yourself. Yes, this was the heat of the moment, and Abria was angry and frustrated that Brennan kept rolling 20s, especially because they keep rolling 1s. It's like Will Wheaton, and the ghost of Will Wheaton is haunting this place, even though Will's alive and kicking. His influence is still here, I think, from campaign 1. But don't ever do what Abria did here. I'm hoping that she apologized after the session. I'm hoping that Brennan talked to her outside of the session. I'm hoping that Brennan talked to everybody at the table about respect for each other. Can you, if I did that at my table, because my players roll out a lot of nat 20s against me, if I grab one of their dice and tossed it, I'm not going to have players at my table anymore. This made me hate Abria a little bit. It made me lose respect for Abria, let's say that. I don't hate Abria. I lost respect for her in that moment. I kind of understood it, but I still lost respect. So please, players, dungeon masters, respect the other people at the table, and that includes their dice. During the fight, we learn that Julian is 2 levels of fighter and 1 level of rogue. We learn this because he needs to move up to Primus, but doesn't have the movement speed to get there, and at this point doesn't have his cunning actions to bonus action dash to get to him. And he also uses action surge. So 2 levels of fighter, 1 level of rogue. Still no subclass for him, of course, because you got to hit level 3 to get those. So we're a little bit closer in figuring out some players here. Taisha finally arrives upstairs and sees Earthrin with what looks like a heart in his hand. And Primus yells up, asking if he has it. Back down in the courtyard, Julian attacks a fleeing Primus and rolls a nat 20. I am loving how Brennan handles nat 20s in his campaign so far. He gives the players more information, he lets them choose an option, or in this case, gives the player a boon for use down the road. Let's watch.
On that nat 20, I will allow you to make an insight or a perception with advantage. You can go ahead and make the roll first, whichever one you want to make.
This will be perception.
Okay.
That'll be a 19.
Let's go.
On that critical hit, ask any question you want about the man that has just set doom upon your family. As he attempts to walk away from you, you landed what should have been a killing blow. You have fought so many battles. In Julian's mind, what is burning within him as he sees Primus Taconis defy the boundaries between life and death?
Is there anything in his gait, in his reaction, that shows that he can be killed in the ways that I understand?
On a 19 perception, he moves away from this place, and you study as he moves. If this man were a god, he would not be fleeing right now. This is just a man, and he can be killed. On that critical hit, from this point forward, in any attack you make on the Lord Primus Taconis, where you are at half hit points or fewer, you may attack with advantage.
Let's go!
I have never thought about giving a player something like this, a boon against an enemy later on in the campaign. I give out magic items like candy, I give out feats, I give special things like that, but that always makes the players overpowered. And trust me, my players are super OP right now. But something like this, in this case, giving Julian advantage against Primus, if Julian has less than half his hit points left, is amazing. It is something that may or may never get used. It is something that may have a huge benefit down the road, but it also is so very specific that it's not going to change Julian. It's not going to make him overpowered at level 3 compared to the other players. And it rewards Julian for a nat 20 and for asking if Primus is a god. So I think Brennan rewarded Nat for the roleplay option of it as well. I'm loving that. This is something I am definitely going to start doing more of in my games, especially for my players that they tend to roll in a lot of nat 20s, especially you, Miss Maeve, Miss Paladin, you and your nat 20s. So this is going to be huge rather than giving out more magic items. I'm going to definitely start looking into this. After Primus leaves, the spectral dead erupt into the courtyard. These are called the Restless Dead that have given up everything of who they were to try to come back and will suck the life out of anything near them. Valus has fought them before, but alongside her sisters, never alone, but she knows they can be defeated. Back upstairs, Aranessa uses the spell Entangle in a way I actually never thought about doing. As ghouls were trying to carry her to the balcony, she casts an Entangle on herself and chooses to fail to save. And instantly, vines and roots wrap up, grab her, and hold her down to the ground, preventing the ghouls from carrying her forward. That's awesome. I've never thought about using attack spells on myself or my party members when I'm in a player, or as a dungeon master on other NPCs to prevent certain things from happening. That is just an interesting way to use it. I love it, and just thinking outside the box, right? And that's the thing with spells, as players, think outside the box. Ask your DM if something is possible. And in this case, entangle on yourself is absolutely possible. So I love this. I'm going to try to keep it in mind as a player going forward, especially in my one campaign where I am a totem of the World Tree Barbarian. So I've got roots and trees coming up everywhere soon. So I can't wait to use that then. Taisha is brought down to 0 hit points by the ghouls in her wolf form, but because she's an orc, she snaps up, tears out of her wolf form, back to 1 hit point. Right then and there, Taisha uses an ability called Land's Aid. So now we know what Taisha's subclass is, and I was right about this. She's Circle of the Land. I love Circle of the Land in 2024. You can change your land every day, which gives you access to different spells based upon that land choice. So druids and clerics they have access to all their spells, right? But they can change them every morning. So being able to do this ahead of time, if you know you're going up against a red dragon, choose the polar region so you get a lot of cold-based spells. Circle Land is one of those druid classes I've never played, but I just might have to here soon. Brennan has Occtis make a con save. And then Valus hears a song of the nightingale, as does Taisha. Occtis fails a save, and Brennan asks him to describe what he thinks death would be like. Again, another great moment of letting the player think about their character deeper. Let's watch.
When he was alive, what did Occtis think would happen when he died? The underworld is a known thing, but yet no one can ever really know the touch of death until it happens. What did Occtis imagine it would be like to die?
I think he thought considering, he'd been told growing up how his family, they weren't this, but they were the stewards of the passage of life and death. They were a necessary part of the cycle. And he thought that due to his affiliation and his family, he would have an easier time passing and be able to make it through and go into the natural cycle, and that the problems that are affecting the world wouldn't bother him because his family knew what to do. That's what he was told, and that's what he believed.
Primus grabs Earthring in the heart and plane shifts out. Aranessa has been holding a ready action, and when Julian finally makes it up the stairs, casts haste on Julian. I love haste on a fighter or a rogue. The amount of damage that they can do, the amount of attacks, the distance they can cover is just amazing. And Julian uses it to his advantage to actually be able to reach Aranessa and kill a ghoul in the process. So great use of haste. So you spellcasters that have haste, keep this in mind as a ready action to if the fight's going sideways and you need to give one of your players a boost. Taisha, again, drops unconscious and promptly rolls a nat 1, failing 2 death saves. During this, Brennan allows Taisha to see Occtis' spirit rushing away from her and gives her a moment to describe what she's feeling and to say something to Occtis. Again, letting the players roleplay and think about the characters. Loving this. Brennan actually allows Occtis to respond, and he says he will return. Then Primus crushes his heart and tells him to come home. Occtis fails to save, and appears to be literally torn between the two people calling him. Aranessa uses healing word on Taisha, and she returns to life. Now, this is the second time Taisha's dropped to 0. Granted, the first one doesn't actually count, but it does. And things like healing word cause this yo-yoing effect to happen. And this is why in my game, every other time you drop to 0, you gain a level of exhaustion. It's to make it show how tired and how really wrecked your character actually is if you start gaining levels of exhaustion because you come up, go down, come up, go down. I love that healing word exists. It's great. But that yo-yoing effect is one of the downsides of D&D, especially with range spells that can just bring a player up. Not a lot, just enough to get them back up for them only to fall unconscious. So consider using something like exhaustion on every other drop to 0. You can do it on every, and it does make your game more gritty, but it can spiral very fast for the player. So just think about that. Occtis, in the realm of death, tries to sew himself back together, rolls an Arcana check to begin stitching himself back up, and feels himself being pulled towards Primus. Then a white and special face appears looking at Occtis and says, "Something's wrong with the boy. Primus, you fool. What have you done?"
Face, white and spectral, looks down. Oh, something's wrong with the boy. Primus, you fool. What have you done? You feel something stirring inside you. Something's messing with the stitches from inside of you. In the forest, you're back here moving towards the darkness. The stitches, there's something pushing against them. It's stopping your work. A wing bursts out of your midsection. You look down and see suddenly a little nose pushes out. And from the gory midsection, wet with your own viscera, a tiny little fox, its head unattached to any body at all, turns around and looks up at you, scared.
I love how Brennan keeps Occtis involved. When a player character dies almost immediately, what do you do with the player that is sitting there? You're in the middle of combat, the character's dead. Do you have that player roll up a new character and bring him in from the back of the cave? Yes, you can. You can absolutely do that. Or you can do what Brennan does here and keep Occtis involved. Now, granted, some of this is because of the Stone and Night song and the way this fight was supposed to happen, I believe, and we'll talk about that, like I said, a little bit later on when we talk about how railroady these first 4 episodes kind of are. But I do love how he keeps Occtis at the table, keeps Alexander at the table, rather, and having him roll dice and be involved. You don't want a player sitting around doing nothing. This is the case for a player that character just died or a new player waiting to join your game. Bring them in, bring them back as soon as possible. Make it make sense. There's a couple different things you can do, but don't let players sit around not being involved. Taisha has now made it to Occtis. Velis is downstairs taking on the Restless Dead, but rolling very, very poorly. Again, Will Wheaton, did you curse these guys? What did you do? Occtis rolls another Arcana check. Like I said, I love this. Over 20 good, below 10 bad, but he rolls a 19. Pin's head continues to emerge from his chest. He reaches up and tries to pull the Stone of Night Song out. He does, and the spectral face from before screams no as Occtis flies apart, with the last part remaining being the hand with the stone. It's at this point that Brennan asks Alex to leave the table. So, obviously, anything that Alex and Occtis was going to do is now done. Now it's going to have to wait until later in the episode, or is Occtis truly done? We'll just have to wait and see. During the combat, Aranessa started growing a tree out of the desk and tells Taisha to grab Occtis and come over to her and Julian. Aranessa and Taisha, using different spells and abilities available to them, determine that the least amount of Taconis in the house is near the bridge leaving the Palazzo. So Aranessa casts Tree Stride, and they all move to a tree near that bridge. Julian doesn't want to leave and starts to head in towards where Velis is. Taisha asks Julian to leave with them and cast Cure Wounds on him. Now, if you remember, back in episode 1, Taisha hated Julian. It was going to make for some cool dynamics, I thought, going forward. But now it seems, just maybe, Julian has earned a little bit of a respect from Taisha. So I wonder if that hate is still going to be there. Again, we'll have to wait and see going forward. Julian and Velis are standing side by side to take out the remaining dead. Taisha yells to Julian and Velis to run, and then she crosses the bridge. Velis tells Julian, I will stay and finish this, but it will not make you feel better. I think Velis knew that Julian, because of his father laying dead near him, was willing to give it all up to protect us, just because, and to protect the others. And Velis, I'm loving Ashley's character here. I'm loving how she's playing Velis. Velis knows that there's more to life than just death, right? And that it's not going to make him feel any better. So maybe later on you can do something. So come. Don't stay here and die. Come with us. Julian grabs his gauntlet and runs for the bridge. And combat ends with the screams of the remaining living within the Palazzo being extinguished. I said, so over 2 hours of combat. There was a lot there. So thank you for watching this part. It was an intense combat, a lot of moving pieces. And as I said before, that was a fight the players were not supposed to win. Occtis, I believe, was supposed to die. And that's a good thing. Players, as I've said, not everything should be tilted towards the players. It makes the game boring. Switch it up a little bit. I've said this before. I think these first 4 episodes were very railroady. And I get it for a couple different reasons. One, I think these 4 sessions were what would normally happen in a session 0 or a pre-session 1 when you as a DM would sit down with a couple members of the party, individually, a couple small groups, to explain how did the players get to level 3 in this case. You just don't start off as a level 3 adventurer. So you would roll them up, you would maybe have them do a little mini adventure or 2 to get them to level 3, work on their backstories, etc. Campaign 1, the players were level 7 or 9 when we first met Vox Machina, but they had a whole homebrew campaign going behind them. Campaign 2 and Campaign 3, the players started at level 3 for each, I believe, and each of them came in with fully fleshed out backstories and groups within the groups of things that happened to them before they all came together, which is what you want. You want to have those individual stories. So I think that's what these first 4 sessions were for. Also, being a new world, new environment, new campaign, this was a way for Brennan to do a lot of player character backstories and a lot of lore all at once. In the other campaigns, we would get a ton of lore, but it would be 15, 20, 30 episodes of the lore slowly coming out. In this case, he was able to take 4 episodes and dump a bunch of lore into it, explain the world, explain the recent events, explain everything driving this campaign all at once, which I totally understand. And I totally understand if viewers of the previous campaigns are not a fan of this campaign so far. I can totally get it. You need to take notes. I haven't been taking notes while I watch these episodes so I can do these videos. But there would have been times without the notes that I would have been lost. The names, all the houses, the lore, it's a lot to absorb in roughly 20 hours. So if you didn't like these first 4 episodes, I get it. These first 4 episodes, they've already called the Overture. This is really a mini shot. This was a guided, directed, railroaded story to set everything up, to establish that campaign, and to create the initial BBEGs and initial arc for the campaign. It should not be considered part of Campaign 4. It's really its own little side thing. So, if you didn't like it, come back for episode 5, The Soldier's Table, when I believe we'll get a lot more real D&D. It won't be as much political intrigue, of course. I get why Brennan did it. I get why he railroaded, especially in this fight, railroaded Occtis. Occtis never really had a chance to not be killed and have that stone put in him. I get it. Totally understand it. It's just, it was very heavy-handed, and it's not what I expected from the first 4 sessions of a campaign. If they marketed this as the one shot, right, prior to the campaign, that side of it wouldn't be bugging me so much as it is, because Brennan's a great DM. And keep in mind too, Brennan also for Critical Role has done the multi-shots where you were supposed to railroad the players. Certain things were supposed to happen. So I'm hoping that once this is out of his system, he'll get back to the DM that he is for the other games, for Dimension 20, and get back to being a DM that doesn't railroad the players and lets the players have agency. So I've had issues with starting Thimble rolling death saves without letting us know whether that fight happens with Laura and those are the results of it, or if that's just where he decided to start them. I'm not sure how railroaded Thiazi's death was. Was the machinations of Hal and everybody behind the scenes guaranteed to fail? If so, what was the point? Right? So, as Dungeon Masters, be careful when you have an idea like this that you don't force it onto the players and you don't force that story to happen the way you want it to happen. Now, if Occtis had saved and didn't die and didn't get the stone put into him, yes, will it mess up Brennan's story? Absolutely, or at least delay it. But at least it would have let the players have agency. And I don't think the players had as much agency as we think they did in these first 4 episodes. What do you think? Do you think I'm way off base? Do you agree? Let me know in the comments. Al gives Murray the letter that Thimble gave him that has Bolaire written on the outside of it. It basically says that Bolaire is not what he seems, and the letter seems to have been meant for Murray and not Bolaire. Bolaire's name on the outside was more than likely just how Thiazi filed the dirt, so to speak, he had on people. Thiazi writes that he has had success working with Bolaire, but he is not a friend, and he should be in the museum rather than working for it. There's a last line of the letter, which we'll get to a little bit. Bolaire and Hal have been very good friends, and Hal, again, knew nothing of this agreement between Bolaire and Thiazi. It seems there was a lot that Thiazi kept from Hal. During roleplay between Hal and Murray, Brennan wants to jump in, but waits, starts to say something, but one of the players says something first, so he just continues to wait. As a dungeon master, do your best not to interrupt when your players are talking in character between themselves. Jump in when you need to in terms of moving the story forward or for a lore drop. Let the players do all the talking. You as a dungeon master will spend many hours behind the screen doing all the talking at the table. Many hours, maybe almost entire sessions. So if your players are willing to run with it and keep the story going on their own, Sit back and let him. Jump in when you need to. We also learned that Murray is a diviner wizard and not an illusionist as I originally thought she was going to be. Her portent rolls for today were a 2 and a nat 20. Gotta love portent rolls as a player, not so much as a DM, because anything under a 10 will be used against you, and everything else will be used to benefit the players. Brennan also advises Marisha, above table, that with a nat 20, she is guaranteed success, even for something seemingly impossible, just for something today. So basically, choose how she uses it wisely. A little foreshadowing from Brennan, we'll have to wait and see. This is also a reason why, in my game, saving throws and skill checks are not auto successes for 20s, but they're also not auto failures at once. Roll your dice, add your modifiers, add guidance or bardic inspiration to make the DCs that I have set. Now, if you hit a 20, I will knock 2 off of the DC. So you do get a little bit of a benefit, and I'm also going to start doing what Brennan's done in these episodes, is maybe give the player something more for that nat 20, even if they may have failed to save, give them something else, right? But a portent, if you have a diviner wizard with portent rolls, and you get in that 20, this is why skill checks should not be auto successes. We find Azune at Falconer's Rest, the memorial to the Falconer's Ward. It has no names on it, as he watches Taor, Cadigan, Wikander, Tyranny, and Thimble disappear in the distance. He says the names of the fallen in the Falconer's Rebellion and ends by saying Thiazi Fang. Turns out, Azune goes to the Falcon's Rest every day. He doesn't want to let the past go because it thinks it needs forgetting, which he would never do. He's willing to stay in pain if it means memories are kept alive. He repeats the names of the 5 that just left as a way to remember them, but also wonders if they will remember him. Man, I love Luis as a player. He just does emotional trauma so well. Whether it was Xerxes and Calamity or Azune here, he is just hitting those notes so well. So players take note. Tap into that. You know, not all of us are professional actors, of course, but if you can tap into that emotion and make it come out at the table, it's just going to give your character so much more depth. Azune arrives back at the house, only to be met by Murray and Hal on their way out to go find Occtis, but first they're going to stop and get Bolaire. Bolaire is back at the Arcanaut, the museum where he works. They're all cleaned up after events earlier. What transpired seems to be a routine event for Bolaire, so this is really interesting. We also learned that he really wants to have a talk with them. There's a great line from Marisha here that makes Brennan just lose it.
What do you need, Miss McNisson?
We're going hunting. And it's bastard season. Let's go.
Where are... I know where you are. One moment. God. And I assume she's just going to be an asshole with me at the door.
You go to open the door. In my head, I'm just seeing brick season, bastard season, brick season, bastard season, brick season, fire.
I love when my players make me laugh like that. My players, they tend to tell a lot of jokes at the table, and it's great when it doesn't interrupt things, but it's awesome. It doesn't happen as often as they like when I laugh like this, but it does happen. For you younger viewers, this is one of the scenes from Looney Tunes that we all immediately think of, and this is what made Brennan laugh so much. Hal tells Bolaire if they have some things to hash out, and tells him that Thimble's left the city. Bolaire's mad because him and Thimble had an agreement, an arrangement to meet, so he's kind of upset. So Bolaire takes him down into the archives, breaking museum rules in the process. Bolaire seems more energetic than normal, but a little bit shaky on his feet. And also, his skin is not as gray as usual, but it's more healthier. Bolaire opens a secret archive within the archives, a round staircase that goes down 2 floors, walled with bookshelves, and at the bottom is a desk, boards, paper, and a vault door that he opens. Inside the vault's rather large, full of very many bizarre objects. Murray notices a 30-foot-long stone sculpture of a hand with raised runes, similar to a tattoo, in a language that resembles giant writing. But at the shattered wrist end, instead of stone, there's a bone sticking out, meaning this is a petrified hand of something giant. Hal casts Comprehend Languages to read the runes in Ancient High Giant, which is taken directly from Primordials. And it says, "Where we have stood since the dawn of time, no one else will shape against. Hal tells Azune that Thiazi, in his last few moments, told him that they have business with Murray and Bolaire. Hal then asks Bolaire why his brother would be warning Murray about Bolaire. Hal and Bolaire meet weekly, so why doesn't Hal know any of this? Bolaire tells him that a week after he met Thiazi, Thimble arrived with a letter, and it mentioned discovering things about Bolaire that can make things unbearable for Bolaire if revealed. So Thiazi forced him to start stealing from the Arcanad and threatened him not to tell Hal. Bolaire was hoping that with Thiazi's death, it meant he could start cleaning up his mess, and that's why he wanted to talk to Thimble. It seems Thiazi was complicated, but also cruel and could be hateful. The things that Bolaire had done paled to the things that Thiazi has done, and that's an eye-opener for Hal here. Thimble was the go-between between Thiazi and Bolaire, so because Bolaire couldn't stand to be around Thiazi. And Bolaire doesn't know how to get the group to trust him without Thimble being there. So that's an interesting little piece of information from Bolaire that could cause problems with the party, with whatever table they end up at. If the group can't trust Bolaire, it can make things rough. Players, when you create characters, it helps if the players at the table trust each other, or the characters trust each other. You need to be able to trust the guy who's got your back, right? So creating edgelord characters or creating characters that are always at odds with the party can be fun for a bit, but you've got to have that trust. So with Taliesin throwing this right out there that this trust may not be there, it means these next few episodes could definitely be interesting from a party mechanic standpoint. At this point, we get the Bolaire history lore drop. We learn a lot about Bolaire here. We learn that he fought in the Shapers' War. He helped his family murder a god. Bolaire was actually created during the Shapers' War. He woke up 2 days before the death of Rowan, the trickster god of the halflings. He was created specifically to destroy the god. He's not a machine, so he's not a construct. He is alive. The way Taliesin puts it, he is a part, a character in a series of plays to murder a god. If he puts on a different person, he is still the same mask. Flashback to earlier, to the cold open. Come to find out that when Audris grabbed that mask and looked at the rune, basically, he became Bolaire. The mask is Bolaire. That body is just a vessel. It's nothing. Come to find out, Bolaire switches bodies a lot. And I love this idea of the mask. It's not Jim Carrey. It's not the mask, but I'm sure that probably influenced Taliesin here. When asked directly by Hal, who or what are you? Taliesin, or Bolaire, responds, I'm an object created to kill a god. I am a thing. I am a mask that can be worn. I am a mask that can wear other people. It was worn many times in battles over the decades, but during the Falconers' Rebellion, had his first original thought. He was a character whose play had ended. He was tired of running through the motions looking for more. He took the body that was holding him and found his way here. And then one day he saw one of Hal's plays and realized that those plays were the more he was looking for. And that Hal is the only friend that Bolaire's ever had. Thiazi treated him as a useful thing, a tool, not as a person. Not sure how Thiazi found out. During the Falconers' Rebellion, Bolaire was used during clandestine missions. He has brothers and sisters, but none have been found, with the exception of the one that was in the box at Hal's house. The last line of the letter to Murray says, if you took that mask off of him, I suspect you'd have him well in hand. Completely changes what we thought when we initially heard that. We didn't know what that meant. Now we know. It means so much more than that. The mask is clearly handmade out of bone or clay. The eye sockets are voids with just those two little blue dots in it. At one point, Azune tries to cast mending on a nick in the mask. Brennan was going to let Taliesin determine the effect of what happened. And even though this catches Taliesin off guard and he's not ready to answer it, I love this idea. Again, Brennan lets the player describe character backstory, character elements. Let your players do this. Don't do the work, let them do the work, if they can. They may ask you for information about wars or lore, but let your players do what they can to describe their relevant information. Let's talk about Taliesin. Taliesin, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is the oldest player at the table, and he's pretty much my age. And he's also, I believe, the most experiential, game player at the table. Taliesin's characters have so much thought, and they're always outside the box. I love these ideas, and this idea is brilliant. My friend Karen thought he was a construct. I thought he was not an elf, but I wasn't sure what he was. Never once thinking he was the mask itself. That is such a great idea. So players, when you're creating your characters, you can dive into stereotypes. You can dive into the tropes. Be what everybody else has been in over the last 50 years of Dungeons and Dragons. They work for a reason. They're great. They're fun to play. If you can, think outside the box. Or in this case, think inside the mask. We also learned more lore about the gods and the Shapers' lore. The pariah blades were created by the orcs, specifically the Lois, Taisha's family's the Lois, to destroy the god of war. Staves were made to destroy the god of sun by the humans. The elves made one arrow to destroy their gods. There's no certainty in the knowledge of what the weapons of the halflings were, but I'm beginning to think we know what they were. They created these masks. But I'm sure we'll get some clarification on that as these episodes go on. The party gets interrupted by a museum guest. During this role-playing moment, the guest, Lady Amaria Comeria, notices that there are no lights at the Palazzo Davinos. And the Palazzo is right there in the river. It's a massive estate. There's always lights on them. There's always people. Bolaire, upon noticing this as well, asks her to leave and then tells the rest of the party, and they all head to Palazzo Davinos, as this is where they know Occtis and Bayless are. They arrive 20 to 30 minutes later. As they arrive, Murray messes Taisha, but no response. The gates aren't closed, seems deserted. There's no bodies, there's no blood. All the torches are snuffed out. Bolaire walks up to the center and picks up a bit of melted black wax. Murray knows that this is powerful necromancy. It's a material component of a spell that was supposed to shred violently the veil between the world of Ahriman and the realm of death beyond. Hal goes deeper into the Palazzo to listen, and he's about 40 feet away from Azune when Azune casts mending on a candle. Now, Azune doesn't truly know the meaning of the words mending, the verbal component aspect of it. But Hal, because he cast comprehend languages earlier, knows that the verbal component of mending is remember. I love this. I've never even thought about the verbal components of spells before, but for Brennan to make mending have a verbal component that is actually remember is just awesome. Of course, you remember what you were. That's how you can mend. Great idea. I'm definitely still on this one going forward, hopefully. I'm going to have to talk to my players and let them know. Start thinking of what the verbal components to your spells are. We know that a lot of players will describe actions and how they pull things. Liam, especially, as Caleb, would describe every spell he casts. None of my players really do that much. I do ask occasionally. But making them think about verbal components is just another way to make them think about their characters. I love this. The candle remembers what it was and reforms to the candle that was being carried by Lord Primus. Hal hears a fox's footsteps as it runs out the gate. Hal leads them rushing out of the palazzo, and they are running towards the Lloyd family estate. As they arrive, Brennan, as he has always done, asks Abria to describe the Lloyd estate. Let's listen. I love this description, especially the part about the trees, especially now knowing that Abria is a circle of the land druid.
It is a large single-story estate that sort of spills over onto like a gentle, like a gentle decline on it's built into the side of a hill, and very specifically on the property. Like it's a very normal sort of like outdoor, indoor, like high arched stucco, like sort of Spanish colonial vibe. But all the trees on the property are either like golden ginkgo, but like fiery red, or like ironwood trees, so that like the like really thick, not that like shreddy trunks of the tree, like they get very dull gray and very hard easily. So it's just two very specific kinds of trees that don't appear anywhere else in the city.
Aranessa describes what was done to Occtis. She describes the Stone of Night Song being in Earthrin's hand and Earthrin killing Occtis. Taisha also knows that Earthrin had his heart at one point. Divine necromancy is pouring from Occtis's body, and Taisha backs away when she notices this. Finally, Bolaire, Hal, and Murray reach the Loy estate. Bolaire goes directly to Occtis. Murray casts Mage Hand, and Bolaire summons a glass scalpel for the Mage Hand to use so they can remove the Stone of Night Song. Brennan asks for a medicine roll, that even with Bardic Inspiration and Guidance, the DC is going to be 30. And this is when Murray uses her portent, Nat 20, guaranteeing success. Now, just for fun, Brennan had everybody roll, and Townsend did roll a Nat 20, but the Bardic Inspiration die and the Guidance die were both Nat 1s. Because the Nat 20 was an auto success, we get this moment. Now, this clip is several minutes long, but stick with it.
With this portent that comes in,
Yeah.
there are certain moments where there can be no room for error. Standing here in the garden of the Loy family, where they first spoke to each other almost 100 years ago, long before the Shapers' War, where an Orcish smith looked at his family and said, I can work wonders of steel and forge engines of war. Why can't I keep my family safe? What would it take to make something that could make us free? Standing beside here, Azune, in your head, remember, 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 remember. Like the strings of a great instrument being plucked, you watch Murray reaching out with this mage hand. There's only one way this happens. To give you a chance. It goes wrong every time. Except for right here, right now. Bolaire's hands. Bolaire, you know with intimate detail how to handle dead bodies. You did it earlier today.
Yeah.
Hal and Taisha, your hands are closed. You have to get this right. Taisha, in the garden of your family. Julian, farthest away from what now unfolds as your shadow gets longer. Valus, reaching in. Flesh is parted. And something where a heart should be is removed. This is an auspicious day. Murray, you see it. The Stone of Night Song. And as it is removed, flapping of wings. Not only Taisha and Valus, but all of you can hear as from a distant wood. Nightingale. Nat 20. Stone is here, and Bolaire, it floats in that mage hand. That medicine check is successful. The perfect preservation of magical forces is unveiled in this moment. Bolaire and Murray, you make eye contact with each other. This group of people in this space, Murray, you are certain, was supposed to happen. Not by the will of some god, not by some plan. It was supposed to happen if and only if You want this city to be saved. Turns out you do. Because several absolutely thunderous, potent, magical mistakes are not only prevented, but in this moment, mended. You've fixed things you weren't even aware had been broken. And Bolaire and Murray, as you look at each other, you realize you are very different people, but you've just done one of the most important magical acts that this city's ever seen, and this is where they made a sword that killed the gods.
After this, the players hear the gasp from Occtis. And as Occtis comes alive, Brennan describes what Occtis remembers from the afterlife.
Occtis, you remember more. Flashing before your eyes, you see night song, words, celestials, black wings, white wings, carriages of gleaming white liquid as blood moving out from the city. You see endless night storm. You see the Dvalmar Pass, carriages of the Royce family. You see the Taconis moving. The face of not your father, but could it be his father? Something else. Spirits of the dead, armies of the Taconis. But the armies aren't marching in life. They march in death. There is a war being fought in the underworld. Your family is waging it. You saw it all unfolding. You see an orcish warrior standing against the dead somewhere past the Dvalmar Pass. You see the symbol of the Barrow Guard.
I love this idea of you as the DM providing information to a player that just came from the beyond. They would have information, maybe, of things not available to the players. And in this case, everything that Brennan described is something that the Taconis family would probably know. Occtis himself wouldn't. So this is another great way to do a lore job. I've never thought about doing this before, but it's definitely interesting, and it's definitely something I'm going to keep in mind because I'm always looking for ways to get lore into the game, especially important lore that the players got to know. And rather than trying to figure out a way for the players to find it, you know, they got to go here and search, they got to go talk to this people, just have it be part of what the player remembers from the afterlife. I'm a big fan of doing lore in visions and dreams, but I never thought about this. So again, a great idea I'm stealing. Brennan describes Occtis as a soul that is unraveled, but a body that is alive and dead. He tells him he's breathing fast, like he's trying to catch his breath, but he knows he never can, so he just stops breathing and realizes he doesn't need to breathe. Valus has watched the Stone of Nysong bring someone back from the Veil of Death. We learn that Valus has been alive for more than 800 years. Her life before was sorrow, mourning, and prayer to a God she can no longer hear. I love that. I love that little bit of description for Valus that brings out a little bit of her backstory. Lets the players know that they all knew she was old, but damn, she's old. And it allows them to describe what her life was before that. Now with this new group, her life may not be that. It may have a purpose. It may have more than sorrow. It may have more sorrow. So it's just a great moment, and I love it. There's a great moment where Matt, as Julian, is angry. Occtis' father killed Julian's father. Julian wants to know what Occtis knew. Matt gets heated. He yells. The table starts to amp up. Everybody starts to get a little violent. Occtis has no idea why his family was there. He hasn't seen them in years. You know, Taisho steps in between Julian and Occtis because Julian started to have his blade up. Aranessa then steps in between the two of them. And Brennan did this before in episode 1, I believe, maybe episode 2, where he steps in as the NPC when he notices that the players are starting to get amped. This could come to blows between the characters. It could be PvP. Brennan doesn't want this to happen, so he uses an NPC to get in the middle of it. And I love that.
Tonight, the house of Davinos, the house of Royce,
have fallen. Our allies turned against us. This city is no longer safe. But we are not without our own strengths. So understand me when I say this, Julian. There is a fight waiting for you. And it's waiting for me too. Shadows lengthen. They surround us all. The doors to Fairy have closed. Step by step, wound by wound, we are made less. I will not have it.
I keep saying I love that, but there's a lot to love in these episodes, especially if you're trying to learn from it. There's a lot you can learn in these 4 episodes. Even if you weren't happy with the 4 episodes, man, I sure learned a lot, and I'm taking a lot of tips and tricks with me as I go as a player and as a dungeon master. What an episode, and what an end to the Overture. Like I said earlier, the soldier table will be the first session with individual tables, starting with episode 5. I know I'm looking to leave behind some of the political intrigues. I'm not a big fan of it. It gets confusing. I want to watch D&D. If I want to watch political intrigue, I'll watch Game of Thrones. And I know at some point we'll get back to the Seekers, which we now know will be Sir Julian, Valus, Occtis, and Taicha. I initially thought it would be Murray, Valus, Bolaire, and Taicha. I got half the table right. So that means the Seekers are Azune, Hal, Bolaire, and Murray. I initially thought it would be Azune, Hal, Wickander, Tyranny, and Thimble. I was torn on Thimble because I was torn between putting her at the Schemers table or over with the soldiers. So I still got half of it wrong. Half of it right is the way I'm going to look at it. So let me know down in the comments what you think of these groupings. I'm not sure what player schedule had in deciding who was at what table. I'm hoping that they made decisions based upon the characters, and that's where they ended up based upon what made sense after 4 episodes. In case of the soldiers, 3 episodes. What did you think of these first 4 episodes? What do you like or dislike so far? Are you hoping that they change going forward and it's not as much railroading? Do you think these episodes are railroading? Let me know in the comments below. May your gold be plentiful, your games well played, and your tables full of laughter.